I want to talk a little bit about the idea of multiple sources of truth and revelation as is understood in the Jewish tradition. And one reason I want to speak about this, I want to share with you where Meirav and I are at in our thinking about the next iteration of Or HaTorah. We've been presenting at a Wisdom Institute, but we realize that a great deal of our teaching focuses on understanding the human experience. For religion, sacred story, liturgy, poetry, the life of depth, mysticism, and so forth. And we realize it's too much of a stretch to fold this all under the term wisdom. And so we're seeing Or HaTorah as both being a center. This is not the name, but I want you to understand it is trying to understand the depths of human experience, especially through sacred and poetic text, as well as teaching a wisdom path, which I think will reduce much of the suffering that I see in individuals, in families, parents and children, and so forth. So we're now at two focuses. We're going to try to give it a title, a working title, a working understanding, and then a mission statement, and we'll send that out, and we'll get some feedback. We want to send out a relatively finished product. So why am I saying this? One person asked me, would we ever consider hosting interfaith dialogue, interfaith study of text? And I think that actually would be a very important thing for us to do because of our holding that the divine mind is refracted into many different faith traditions, many different sources, and therefore studying the wisdom of other faiths and philosophy is actually core to a life of meaning. I want to give you one example, as we say, from the outside and one example from the inside. Let's take Maimonides. Now, anybody who studied Maimonides, and I touched on this earlier in the year, Maimonides is very deeply an Aristotelian. In fact, Douglas Adams, in his book on medieval philosophy, he puts Maimonides in the Islamic philosophic tradition. Maimonides wrote in Arabic, and although, of course, he's Jewish, the questions he was asking, the approaches he took, were right in the line of the great Islamic philosophers. For example, Al-Ghazali, Al-Farabi, and others. So he's right in that tradition. From Adams' perspective, one of the most outstanding exponents of what we'll call Islamicist philosophy. Of course, Thomas Aquinas follows up. So when one wants to understand Islamic philosophy, Jewish philosophy or theology, Catholic theology, philosophy, you have to study all of them together. So that would be an ideal thing that we could do in studying theology, medieval theology, philosophy, is actually integrate study of Islamic theologians, Jewish theologians, and Catholic theologians, and maybe even have experts from each of them join in the study. So that's an example of what we'll call the idea that there is one divine mind refracting into different traditions and philosophies. Now, where do we see this in the Bible? Because I remember I heard one of my favorite rabbis of all time, Rabbi Yitz Greenberg, speak to a mostly Orthodox audience where he made this case, and there was some different discomfort in the room, and he quoted from our Haftorah today. So if you look at our Haftarah, chapter 9, it says in chapter 9, verse 7, so you can memorize this, Amos chapter 9, verse 7, Halo kivnei kushim atem li. Are you Israelites not like the Cushites to me? True, I brought Israel up from the land of Egypt, but also the Philistines from Kaftor and the Arameans from Kir. So God is reminding people, I didn't just rescue you. I rescued the Cushim, I rescued the Philistines, and I rescued the Arameans. And I brought them from one place to another, implying that God has unique covenants with others, and God's unique covenant with others is contained in their sacred stories, their sacred myths, their sacred rituals. And God says, we're not going to talk about them now. I'm just talking to you. But don't think I'm only the God of the Israelites. And not only is God not just the general universal God, but specifically the God of Israel, it seems to say here, I'm actually the specific God of other nations as well. Now, Yitzhak Greenberg gave many, many other sources, but since we're looking at Amos today, I want to just give you one to the idea of what Yitzhak Greenberg called a multi-covenantal God. A multi-covenantal God. And therefore, to engage in interreligious dialogue is to understand how other people understand what I'm going to call now the refraction of the divine mind into their sacred tradition. So we have our unique refraction of the divine mind that we'll call the Jewish tradition. There are other refractions of the divine into other traditions. And therefore, when we study other traditions, when we study together, you might say we are constituting a fuller understanding of the light of the divine, a light refracted into other traditions. So one person that I've studied with for many years, and I was talking about this next iteration of Or HaTorah, asked me, will you be actively engaging in interfaith study to, as it were, reconstitute the divine light that refracts into other groups? And I said, that's a fantastic idea. Yes. So Meirav and I will be working on this very hard to let all of you know what we're up to. And again, it's no longer going to be a institution supported by a membership, but rather everything is open to everybody, and there will be entirely supported by your donations, your support, and all of that will be coming soon.